Hello and welcome to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I'm thrilled, honored, humbled, and grateful to have with me today Miss Kharisma Moraski. Kharisma has more than 18 years in sales and operational experience. She's the Vice President of Sales at Conversica and was considered a top 35 most influential women in sales in 2018. And on a fun side note, Kharisma is an aspiring fiction writer, mom, animal rights enthusiast, which I am as well, and passionate about women in technology, mobile customer experience, and scaling organizations. She's a top leader that loves driving revenue and growth. Kharisma, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're thrilled. We're thrilled to dive in. And the audience, as I had mentioned, audience is dying to know two core things. Number one, if you had to go back in time to when you first started in sales, what is your number one top sales secret to maximize your sales success and your sales results? Who Kharisma is, where'd you come from, and how'd you get started in sales?
Absolutely. So I got started in sales by accident. I think most people who get started in sales by accident. And mostly it's from having a competitive spirit or competitive nature. I got my start selling the most Girl Scout cookies for Troop 264
awesome.
In Galax, Virginia, which is a small town that consists of about 6,000 people, including the 3 surrounding counties.
Wow.
So every year we have this big cookie sales drive that you have to do. Anyone who's familiar with Girl Scouts or the brownies, as what they called it back then, it's a big deal. It's a big push. You get additional funding for your chapter and things of that nature. So every year I had to be the top salesperson. I was 6 years old at the time, and it was something really important. My mom, to this day, I'll still have to give her credit. She would drive me everywhere to go house to house, door to door, had no front teeth. Every year my picture ended up in the paper, and my first sales job out of college, I landed by showing them that picture of me. No front
That's
teeth,
awesome.
standing in front of a big mound of Girl Scout cookies, 3rd year in a row that I'd won. So that's my initial start in sales.
What was your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
I think they called it samosas back then. I don't know what they call them now. It's the coconut ones with the little chocolate drizzle on top. I think they were called samosas back then. I don't know what they're called now.
Yeah, I'm vegan, and the Thin Mints are vegan, so I love those too. I mean, I love them all of them. That's awesome. It's so funny. I forgot that, when you, your mom, you either have to go walk door to door or you have to have someone drive you, to each of the neighborhoods. Did you hit up, all 6,000 neighborhoods then, probably? I mean, 6,000 people?
It was horrible. So if you've ever been to rural Virginia, it's literally like cow farm after cow farm, and then peppered in between these big dairy farms are little subdivisions. And then there's these stretches of road where you have just this 2 miles of road, and then on that 2 miles of road, there's 12 houses. So there was a lot of driving. There was a lot of walking.
That's the hardest neighborhood that's the hardest geolocation to sell door to door.
Yes, it was very painful. I later in life read Zig Ziglar and how he went door to door and sold pots and pans. And I have to say, I really found I found a kindred spirit there.
Wow, that's awesome. So you go from, you said you used the picture to land your first sales gig. So what was your first sales gig?
I did. So the first sales, I used it several times. So I did a contract role with Lamar. I did. It was my claim to fame for a while. I had a portfolio. We won't go into what else was in that portfolio. We'll stick with that one. But I did a contract role outside of right as I was graduating from college with Lamar, which is an outdoor advertising company. It's the big billboards. Now being in California and not wanting to obstruct the beautiful views and sceneries, I'm not as privy to work for Lamar. But at the time,
that's funny.
I know, right?
The billboards.
Right, they block everything. But it was a great opportunity. They actually gave you a company car, and you had an expense account.
Awesome.
And more importantly than that, you actually went through this really intense training program that taught you, the ins and outs of sales and how to kind of do face-to-face sales, as well as what it meant to actually begin with a prospect on the phone and then transition it to a face-to-face sale. So it was a great learning opportunity.
I heard they paid big commissions too. I remember back in the day, right? Or no?
They did with the internship program. It wasn't quite. It was, and I won't even say the salary because this was 22 years ago now. But it was like I thought the salary was amazing at the time, and now it's not even like an entry-level salary in anyone's vocabulary. But it was amazing for me at the time. But I do the really interesting thing was the question I think that actually got like where I landed the position was he asked me, why would I hire you over the other 50 to 75 applicants that I have in the pool? And I said, why wouldn't you hire someone and show me another candidate that started at 6 years old and has a proven track record of winning from 6 years
Such
on?
a badass close.
Yeah, I was
badass close.
I remember leaving that. I was like, yes, I nailed it. And, 2 days later, I got the call and I was really excited to take off.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny because I grew up in Ohio and Lamar was big in Ohio. And one of my startups in college, I did a lot of work with them, like do text message marketing on the billboards. That's too funny. So what was your biggest learning experience there? Just curious.
It's interesting. That one was just a great experience. It was just learning, and I didn't know what I didn't know, so I couldn't really say what would have been wrong or what I would have done better. So it was an opportunity for me to really just absorb. And, for someone who thought they were going to go into like advertising and do media, and I really wanted to be a journalist. Clearly you made that path work. I couldn't do it. So more power to you. Just getting the opportunity to really learn from other sales professionals, it was amazing.
That's awesome.
Great opportunity.
So then what did you springboard to after that?
I think the next memorable one would be Capital One. I think that was a pivotal moment where I had an opportunity to learn what inside sales was, and it's truly a passion of mine because it's a very process-driven environment, very repeatable sales motion. It's something that companies can use to scale very cost-effectively. And it was my first endeavor in really understanding that I loved that type of sales motion, and it was my first opportunity to realize that I could actually be a fantastic sales manager and actually drive performance through others. And it was the first place where I learned what not to do, what to do by learning from someone who I thought did it wrong and what not to do. So it was a great opportunity. I worked at Capital One. It was in Richmond. I came in on the phones, basically an SDR-esque type of role. Yep. Moved from that SDR-esque type of role where we literally used the yellow book.
Oh my gosh.
White pages in yellow book.
Yeah.
So again, dating myself 20 some years ago. And we were retaining various customers and doing outbound cold calling to customers. And I was part of this team, and I moved up from an SDR to what would be considered an inside quota carrying role very quickly. And I remember I was always like the first or second person on the board every month. And then they did this mass hiring. And as they did this mass hiring, the performance across the teams dropped pretty dramatically, right? Because the amount of attention that they were getting per rep, the rep to manager headcount was very kind of skewed and off balance. And I had this team, I was part of this team where I was like always number one or two, and then the team around me was really struggling. And I remember, thinking, hey, I can really help them. So there was these 3 or 4 people that were really good, that I felt like could be really good if they just had the right attention. Started working with them, and suddenly they went from the bottom percentile in the entire department, which was about 75 people at that time that were sitting on the phones, to within the top 10. And one of them actually beat me. I came in 5th that month, and that person came in 3rd. And I'll never forget sitting with my manager. I came in 5th, but our team was 2nd overall, and it had been sitting around 5th or 6th in the department.
Wow.
And I'll never forget sitting with my manager, Steve. I won't say his last name. And I remember him saying to me, hey, you had a really bad month. You came in 5th. So still top 10% of the entire division. But you came in 5th. Why'd you come in 5th? I was like, hey, but did you notice our team? I've been working with X, Y, and Z. And now, so-and-so was number 3rd. They actually did better than me. And all of our team, is within the top 50%. And, we're actually the 2nd team in the division. He's like, that's not your job. He's like, you should be number 1 or number 2. And I remember thinking then that, hey, a good manager would say, how could I repackage this? Or how can I use this to help the entire department move forward? And that was my that was the first time that I started thinking, hey, I really should think about management, because the right person should care about being really good and in the top percentile, but it's okay for someone to beat you if you're transferring that knowledge to multiples and you're actually expanding by multiples. So that was a really
awesome.
Unique, hard learning experience, but also fun.
How did you, does anything stand out that you were doing from daily habits or strategy to become like in the top 10% or the top 5% at Capital?
Absolutely. So one of the things I think I do really well, and I don't know if it's if I inherited this or not, but being able to look at the various value proposition statements, the various input activities that have to happen. I'm really good at looking at what are the things that you need to have as the inputs that will get the outputs that you're looking for. And I'm really good about organizing that into a day and into a structure that becomes very repeatable. So when I walked into Capital One, there was training, but you didn't really know how to structure your day, or you didn't really know when you're talking to certain customer types or, certain keywords, where you should pivot on the value proposition. It was kind of just a lot of information at once. And so as I tried different things, I would recognize the patterns in the things that I was trying and which kind of customers it worked with and which, geo targets it worked with and how many times I need to have a conversation in a day before I would convert. And so what I would do is set micro goals for myself and say, I know if I have 5 conversations, 1 will convert. Okay, I want to come in at 150% of my goal, so I need to have 15 conversations, so I'll convert 3 in one day. And so I would just be very disciplined about tackling those inputs so that I got the outputs that I needed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you realize you want to go into management and you want to coach people. Where did you head to after that?
So after Capital One, I went to a company called Network Solutions, which was one of the original domain providers.
Nice.
The next notable move was to Network Solutions. So again, dating myself, one of the original domain providers. But part of the reason that I joined Network Solutions was this was in the era when they were early 2000s, where the internet boom was really starting to take off and small businesses were actually starting to come online. And so the opportunity with Network Solutions was for me to go into SaaS and into technology. And I was still on the East Coast at the time. So being in SaaS and technology on the East Coast was really rare back then.
Awesome. Impossible.
Yeah, exactly. And but really intriguing to me. I'd read some about the Silicon Valley and I'd had some friends out here, but I'd never really thought about moving at that time and didn't for a decade still. But Network Solutions was well known in the area for that. And they were looking to expand into websites and SSL certificates and various internet-based products that were a great opportunity for me to learn and get into the technology spectrum. So I made a move there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a domain hoarder. I have 500 domains. It's disgusting.
Let me guess, GoDaddy though, right?
Yeah. Just because it's the easiest, it's the most well known. They got me hooked probably from the Super Bowl ads or something. I don't know.
I know they're horrible ads. I don't know how.
Yeah,
they're pretty good.
they do really good with the branding. Okay, so were you doing inside sales there, outside sales, or management?
So I actually built up their entire sales division, inside sales division. So as they looked to move into SSL certificates and as they looked in, and this is part of my continued growth at Capital One, I ended up running some inside sales teams and I continued to grow there and then moved to Network Solutions. They wanted to be able to sell at scale to small businesses, internet and SSL certificates. At the time, VeriSign had cornered the market on SSL certificates. So I brought up a call center in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. Well, that center was already brought up. I worked directly with the center in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, and then actually spun up another outsourced call center. Sorry, we called them call centers back then. Now they're inside sales centers in Toronto, Canada, to sell those products at scale. So we sold hosting products as well as SSL certificates. And our SSL certificate division actually took market share from VeriSign within the first year and went from 0 to a $22 million run rate. So it's phenomenal success.
Huge.
Yeah, it was huge. So phenomenal success. We started with 3 people in Toronto, grew it to over 50, and then the center in Hazleton, Pennsylvania had around 60. So between the 2 centers, we had about 110, and we were doing phenomenal things.
Now, is that deal, are you calling current customers to upsell them to SSL, or are you cold calling SMB new websites? That's a hard strategy. I don't even know where to start with that deal.
So both, and it was very difficult. So we were more strategic with the SSL certificates. We were actually scraping sites
Shit, I love that. I love that.
But we were scraping sites and figuring out when SSL certificates were expiring. And so we were being very targeted at catching them right around day 60 before expiration. And based upon the price point we were coming to market with our partner with, we were able to make a very quick switch. It's a very easy thing to do, and it's a very easy product to switch from. So the stickiness is really the loyalty and stickiness, there wasn't as much loyalty or stickiness. So we were able to make some really quick switches. The selling internet services or websites, we call it was Image Cafe at the time, to small businesses, mom and pop shops even, was much more intense than I think we realized. But we got very proficient at it and very proficient at targeting the size of businesses that we were looking to help them start getting online. We found right around that $1 to $2 million mark, they had at least maybe outsource the technical piece of it, or there was someone that they knew in the family that was technically savvy enough to start moving in that direction, and we were able to make those move very quickly as well.
Wow. And then, because what's the price of an SSL? Like $100?
You know, I think I wanted to, for some reason, say $228 was the one we did for 1 year, and then for 3 years it was short. I think it was like $228 for 3 years, and it was like $99 if you went with a 1 year plan. So it was like a little bit of a price break the longer that you went. But it was really inexpensive even for the time, and it was a very easy sell because they all had to follow the same process to do the secure socket layer. So it wasn't like VeriSign could do anything significantly different, and it was something that was just very easy for us to take market share on.
Wow. And then what is that a one-call close? Like, so are your IS guy people? Yeah.
Almost always.
So you're not like calling to book appointments. It's literally you're calling and you're closing same call instantly, because I think that's the only way to scale that contract value. Like,
oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was 1-2 call max in some cases, but mostly it was a 1 call close. We could actually do it sometimes in like 15, 20 minutes.
That's so awesome.
With the websites, it was normally a 2 to 3 call close, but those were annual contracts, and there was a much more significant value to it. So those took a little bit more time, but it was still, I would say, a 2-week closing period.
Yeah. And I mean, the only reason why I'm diving into this a little bit is just from 0 to 20 is massive, right? So like, you guys were really intelligent with your targeting. I love the scraping. When I sold for Google, I did the same thing for Google Ads, and then built Seamless.AI, our company, to automate it. So like, okay, you have the target list, and then do you just obsess over like what is the best call script to like value prop, pitch, close? Like what's the answer? What's the secret to go from 0 to 20?
So we did it. We were just very straight and to the point. You would ask to speak to the person who ran the website and was in charge of security for the website. You would say, so we used a little bit of that fear technique back then. I don't use it as much now, but back then with what we were doing, basically you were letting them know that their security certificate was going to expire very quickly, and that they were at risk because they were you could always targeted e-commerce sites, because clearly any kind of risk of the certificate expiring was significant.
Well, it screws up your whole domain if it expires. Like, there is risk for sure.
It does. And so we would lead with the risk, and they would get us straight to the person who would make that call, and we would let them know that it's expiring within 60 days, that we could switch them over in a matter of 30 minutes to an hour, and we would save them X amount of money over the course of 3 years. And it was just very easy, and they would just hone in on the savings, and that they only have 60 days.
Ah, I love that. That's so good. And by the way, I love you totally remember everything. Like I never get to go like that deep with someone, and you're just like, yeah, this is like boom, boom, here's the pictures, close, done. I love that.
It's a blessing and a curse. Anyone who's ever been in a relationship with me would say they wish I didn't remember everything. So
yeah, I say the same thing about my fiance. So I unfortunately deal with that every day as well. That's awesome. So you go from 0 to 20. Like how many reps did you have to add to do the 20 mil?
So we started with 3, was able to prove it out literally within 30 days. And because we went through an outsourced center in Toronto, the way that hiring worked in Canada was a lot easier. And because we were only selling one product, we were able to get the ramp time down to 2.5 weeks. So it was really
awesome.
Yeah, very quick process. And we actually grew that team, I want to say at full, it was between 40 and 50. That I'm a little fuzzy on because you have attrition and things like that, but I think it was between 40 and 50. I know between the 2 sites we had right around 100 to 110, depending upon when we were ramping up and stabilizing. But I think that center alone that sold the SSL was around 40 to 50.
That's awesome. And then is that like an hourly position? Is it a salaried position? Just
So they were in charge of the pay structure. We did salary plus commission. We called it salary plus commission. I think that was before the laws changed, and based upon certain job skill sets, you had to be, they coded it salary hourly, but we at that time called it salary.
Yeah.
I think most people that would fill that role would be considered hourly.
Yeah.
You would try to get them to a certain number of hours that would get them to salary.
Awesome. So you crush it at Network Solutions.
Yes.
And then, I mean, like riding that wave, like it sounds like an amazing like wave to ride. What, I know you then went to Healthy Back. What made you, decide to leave there and head to Healthy? And what was the biggest thing that you learned going from 0 to 20, like from that experience?
I think the biggest thing that I learned was that building out, I think it was proving my hypothesis again, right? Like I think as I was younger, and even when I was on the phone when I sold Girl Scout cookies, and when I worked at Capital One, the thing I kept saying to myself is if you focus on the right inputs, you will generate the right output, because you can't control the output. Everyone wants to think they can. The reality is you influence output, but you can never make someone buy, right? So you control the input. And the more that you pull the levers on inputs, the more significantly it changes your outputs, and the more that it drives the performance that you're looking for. And of course, hiring and training the right people to do the right job the right way, and really helping them understand that vision of why the inputs are so important and why you need to be maniacal about the inputs, will get you the outputs that you're looking for. And so if you do that, you have a repeatable sales process that you just pull people into, and it becomes this amazing, super fun, inspirational machine. And I figured that out at Network Solutions, and I don't know that I've changed my playbook. I know Richard Harris has said it's a cookbook now, so I'm trying to digest that internally. I don't know that I've changed my playbook dramatically. I still do the same Sales 101 training that I developed at Network Solutions today that I did then.
Oh, awesome. What type of training is it? Just curious.
It just takes everyone back to the basics. It's simple things like, what's an open-ended question versus a closed-ended question? When do you use open-ended questions? When do you use closed-ended questions? And then it really goes into being just maniacal about being organized in your day and understanding how many inputs you need to do to get the output that you're looking for.
Yeah, I was just on a call this morning doing the same thing with my SDRs. It's like, it seems amazing. People like they feel like you got to overlook that, but that's the most important thing. Like,
that's what you control.
If you have to book X amount of appointments, you know your funnel metrics, and you know how many calls, emails, social touches, whatever you need to do to book that. Like, you just got to do it.
Absolutely. And it should be fun. If you really understand your business, and you really are, and I tell that SDRs are CEOs of their territories, AEs are CEOs of their territories, and there's got to be very close alignment. But the reality is if you really are trying to run your day like you're the CEO of your business, then you will be successful. If you're waiting for someone to tell you everything and you're not running your business, then you're not going to be successful. And so I really believe in what I call enablement and empowerment. I enable every person that works for me to be super successful, and I give them the blueprint to that success, and then it's up to them to execute. And that's the empowerment piece.
That's awesome. Okay, so you went to another call center.
I did. I went to Healthy Back, and this was an interesting move for me because I went from technology to high-end ergonomic products. And the reason I made this move,
when you say ergonomic products, like what do you mean? Like
they help your posture.
Oh, okay, good. I got a problem with that. So that's yeah.
So I'm actually trained on all that. But the reason I made the move was less about the opportunity necessarily at Healthy Back. Although I did work with one of the Alex Murphy, if he happens to listen to this, amazing manager, super inspirational. I stay connected with him today, and I know we'll work together sometime again in the future. So if nothing else, my stint at Healthy Back gave me exposure to him, and I'll be forever grateful for that. But the reason I made the move from Network Solutions was more of a personal one. I was pregnant with my daughter.
Congrats.
And I was traveling to Toronto every month for a week and a half at a time. And so that just wasn't conducive to what I wanted to do for the first year with her. And Healthy Back was local to where I was living, and it was literally like 10 minutes from my house.
Awesome.
It was a good opportunity, but it was more about the personal lifestyle at that time.
Great. And then, so it's internet retail, selling high-end products.
Yes. We outfitted one of Yahoo's offices.
Sweet. That's awesome. How, it was same playbook?
It was very similar there. The interesting thing was at the time that I joined, the economy had started kind of downturning a little bit. So various consumer products were taking big dips. And I think the thing that I was most proud of there was less about massive scale, where at Network Solutions, and then when we talk about Trulia in a minute, the opportunities I have were to come in, pull my playbook in, and see great success at massive scale. Healthy Back was about keeping us out of the red at a time period where most other companies or very similar businesses like that were going out of business. We actually acquired a couple ourselves as out of business. And so sometimes when you look back on your career and you try to think about the things that made the most impact at each one of your stints, they're very different. And so when I think about Healthy Back, the fact that we kept that company alive and that we actually stayed out of the red during that period of time is actually a success. But it wouldn't be one where I saw massive scale. We did a lot of really interesting things with the logistic and supply chain where we cut costs. And none of this was through people or headcount. All of this was through process improvement or vendor selection. And we were able to keep sales at a steady clip. And a lot of some of this had to do with some of the, I would consider Alex, the gentleman I spoke about earlier, really a genius on how he thinks about advertising and bringing customers in, various promotions that we ran and things of that nature. And then being really, really smart about how you thought about capacity in your sales organization and what type of capacity and how you run your inputs a little bit differently. Because this wasn't about massive scale. This was about maximizing at a very lean center.
Wow, that's awesome. And then you had the opportunity to join Trulia?
Oh, that was amazing. I talk about this as one of the most fun things I did because it was so fast. I was there between the actually being there and then kind of helping them in transition with a contract. I think it was a total of about 9 months, and it moved. I feel like it moved almost even faster than what we did at Network Solutions.
Wow.
With less capital, right? So Network Solutions had already made a huge splash with domain, so they had all this cash and capital to make expenditures, whereas Trulia was my first endeavor where it was like truly VC funded, and you had to really watch your burn rate. And I had talked about burn and what that meant to the company and stuff. And of course, Sammy and Pete Flint, amazing leaders, and Pete's done, both of them have done amazing things since. Trulia, I came into 8 sales reps, 2 of which were frontline managers. They just promoted just because they were doing good things. So a little bit of the blind leading the blind there. But we did amazing things, and we grew that team to a little over 50, helping the company hit profitability about 6 months before they thought they could. And this was during we were a real estate company selling to real estate agents and brokerages in the economic downturn of the real estate.
Yeah, brutal market.
It was a brutal market, and we did amazing things, both for the company and how we grew revenue and how we moved from like MRR to more ARR products. And but also for the actual demographic we were servicing, the real estate agents and brokerages that we actually supported during that time were actually able to stay in business more so than the ones that didn't use Trulia or that at the time went with some of our competitors. So it was one of those opportunities where you're not really necessarily doing good, like you're not stopping world hunger, but these people, that was their living, and we actually helped them maintain that while also growing an amazing profitable business. And we grew that team from 10 to 50 over the course of about 6 months. And during that time, not only did we grow it, and one of the things that we learned that I'd seen happen at some other companies, and Capital One was an example of this, and the manager I spoke of, you would see your share per rep drop, like their production per rep drop as you're ramping other people because the focus shifts. And we were able to actually continue to increase the performance per rep as we were bringing on new ramping reps.
Wow.
So it was just a phenomenal run and a great team. Amazing team.
That's awesome. Wow. And okay, so that was like crazy, doubled ARPU. Biggest sales secret or takeaway from Trulia that you learned? One of the biggest things that I learned, because I can be very passionate, a little bullheaded. Well, I don't think anyone would ever say that I can't be really strong and very opinionated. You can't do it on your own. I had a phenomenal, at Network Solutions, it was, I had to do a lot of the grunt work on my own, or maybe I didn't have to.
I felt like I had to. And it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of time, and it was a lot of long hours and long weeks. And at Trulia, Pete Kazidlia, I'm going to butcher his name, so we're going to wipe that off. But he came and helped me train the team. And I think it was my first realization that there are lots of resources in an organization, and a really good manager and a really good people manager and a really good leader will leverage the resources and the talents of those resources the best they can. And I think in the past, I'd probably been guilty of not always leveraging the talent and resources that were available to me that wanted to be leveraged. And that was my first endeavor, really taking advantage. And since then, I think I've been much better leader and much better people manager, because I will leverage every talent there is now on the floor.
Just try to tap into all of the resources available for you to maximize sales.
And why would you not? So you have all these individuals that come in as SDRs or as AEs, and they have all these amazing ideas, and they all have very different backgrounds, and they all have very different skill sets that they can come in and offer. And I think as leaders, sometimes you think, oh, I've just been doing this so long that I know what I need to do, and I'm just going to do it. And the reality is that it's a growth opportunity for them. It's a way for you to scale, and delegation is key, right, as you become a leader. And as I come into orgs now, one of the very first things I do is assess the talent and see, where are these hidden skills and hidden talents, or maybe they're not even hidden, and we're just not utilizing them the way we need to. And it's a phenomenal way for an organization to scale, and it's a great way for them to grow their career. And if we're not doing that as sales leaders or as a leader in general, I think we're actually doing a disservice to everyone. And truly, it was somewhere where I really learned that is probably the best way to scale.
Yeah, and you've got all those brilliant people too that they brought on with all the funding, and that's awesome. That's a great tip. It's easy to want to wear it all on your shoulder and do it all yourself, but it sounds like that's the dumb way to do it. The smart way is you've got all this talent, tap into their expertise to sell more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you can't be in two places at once. So what I think you see a lot of times is training programs drag out, or ramp time is 6 months. And so we're getting ready to bring on some new SDRs here at Conversica. And we were having, I was looking at this 30-day training program, like, oh my God, why is it a 30-day training program? It should be a 2-week accelerated program. And in the second week, they're doing mock calls. So we're building that out now. And part of how we're utilizing that and how we're able to actually make the fast track is you pull different individuals to do the training in areas that they're subject matter experts, so that you're not waiting 2 or 3 days or filling 2 or 3 days of training with busy work while you're waiting for someone to become available. That's a very poor way to scale. It's a very poor way to run a business, and it's not utilizing or growing your talent the way you should. Yeah,
that's smart. I love recording everything that we do. From day to day to experts, like SDRs, outside sales people, I try to record everything, because I'm always worried there's going to be some gold nugget that we want to use for training to repeat and scale. So I love that. Okay. So then you're done with Trulia and you decide, Simplicity?
Simplicity, yes.
What is this? And I'm sorry if this is a massive company. I'm just butchering the name, but
it was Simplicity was well, they're still there. I think they're owned by Axway now, but they are a content management sync and share solution. So competitor with Dropbox and Box.
Okay.
And I came on board.
Tough competitors, Matt. That's brutal.
It was, and we actually did really well against them for very specific reasons, and we can talk about how we focused to compete against them. It was one of the interesting things we had to decide as a leadership team, was how we compete against someone like Box, who had huge share of voice, market momentum, PR, and Aaron Levy had done an amazing job of really creating this marketing machine and putting the rest of his efforts behind that marketing. But met one of my best and greatest mentors ever there, G2 Patel. He's CSO at Box now. Amazing guy, super humble, genius. I'll never forget the day it was part of the reason he hired me was I didn't bring my resume with me, and I pulled up my resume on Simplicity on my mobile phone and said, well, here, you can just read it from here. I don't want to waste paper. So that was one of the things.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that he would later tell me that was one of the reasons. And then my third day on the job, as I was acclimating, he pulled me in the office and was asking me for some statistics. And I'm very data driven, super number oriented. If you haven't seen, as I remember, and I remember a lot of various statistics from different companies. But day 3, and he'd asked me like 5 or 6 questions, and I didn't realize at the time, but the president of the entire division that this set in within EMC, which is a very big company, was actually on the phone while he was asking me this. They get off the phone, and I think I knew like 5 of the 7 questions asked, and this was day 3. And he's like, I'm not sure you know enough about our business. You need to work on that. And
That's awesome.
and I remember being kind of upset at first. And I was like, actually, that's a fair statement. I'm upset because it's day 3, but you know what? I don't know enough. So let me just go back and focus on that. But I learned so much from him. As a sales leader, one of the things he said I didn't focus on enough, and I've taken to heart since then, is the product and how the product fits within the greater market ecosystem, both internally and externally, and really making sure that I understand how the product solves the pain of the customer, not just being able to sell the product because of the end results it can deliver. And so I've become a better salesperson since then. And I think the way that we establish value propositions at companies that I've been at since then has been much better and has driven much more success, quicker, higher conversion rates.
Yeah, and like, do you have any examples? Because it's really interesting around like understanding the value propositions and the personas and the landscape better. Like, do you have like a before and after? I'm just trying to think. Like, it's interesting to, like, that was his feedback.
Absolutely. So let's think, if we just think about, so let's talk of it in terms of simplicity, right? So as a leadership team at Simplicity, we were coming up against Box and Dropbox. Both had much more significant funding. Both had much heavier market presence and bigger engines behind them. We were part of larger EMC, but we were basically had a lot of anonymity and were acting as a standalone within that, almost like a startup.
Like a startup, yeah.
Yeah, like a startup within an EMC with minimal funding. So we were running very lean. We very quickly had to figure out a way that we could differentiate ourselves and focus very heavily on the enterprise. At that point, Dropbox hadn't pivoted yet. They were still very consumer focused, and Box was beginning their pivot. But the cloud was very new to most people, and especially enterprise organizations at that time. And so we focused very heavily on 2 things. Desktop backup was a big thing and was really highly talked about at that time. And one of the things, or one of the pain about desktop backup, is still the content that you store on your desktop, like the Word docs and Excel and stuff. A lot of time you're pulling those out of other content repositories like SharePoint and things of that nature, and you're putting them on your desktop. So that's a leakage potential for companies. And there's risk associated with that. And one of the things that Simplicity did was we actually were able to sync that desktop. And so we became like a pseudo desktop backup, and is a great recovery system for those type of content. In addition to that, one of the benefits of being part of EMC is the on-premise storage. And we went a hybrid route where you could put certain content in the cloud and then certain content on premise within the EMC storage devices. And then we later expanded to other storage devices as well. And so those were product because of where the market was and because of the pain points that we needed to really understand and solve for the enterprise customers who weren't quite ready to 100% go to cloud at that time. Those were product value propositions that we focused very heavily on that helped us win significant market share in enterprise very early. Intel and some other very large companies actually went with Simplicity over some of the other solutions because we had that option of on-premise. And so legal and compliance sides of the house and business and things of that nature. And so part of the reason that was developed in that way was because you had someone like G2 leading the organization and really understanding where we could get product market momentum and fit very quickly. And so since then, as I come into new organizations like even like at Conversica, as I come in and I think about the ecosystem that Conversica plays in, where we fit is very unique to us, and understanding the other tools that surround that, like an Outreach, which is an amazing solution, Drift, which is an amazing solution, but we're very different, and where we fit is very different, and making sure that customers and consumers and the pain point that we fix they understand that. So that's all going back to understanding not only the product and what the features and functions and what it does is, but also where it fits in the market and how it really solves a very specific pain for the customer that you're going after.
Wow, that's amazing. I appreciate that example. So you guys crush it in simplicity, and then you have the opportunity to lead sales development at Clary.
Yes.
Wow. And they do like predictive sales management, right?
No, so I think.
What do they do? Sorry.
That's okay. So I think what I would explain that they do is there's this big gap when you think about sales acceleration, when you think about opportunity to close. There's a lot of things that do lead development, and there's a lot of quote to cash that help you finish out the process and collect money. But there's this big segment in the middle that's like the opportunity to close process, where there's a lot of visibility that's lost, a lot of data that's lost, and you're really kind of doing this weekly grilling exercise with your sales rep, trying to figure out where various deals are at various times. And so Clary came in and is really heavily focused on, from the time an opportunity is created until the time it is lost or won, what's going on in there and how can you maximize your sales effectiveness and sales efficiency, your resources, your people resources, your most valuable resources. How can you manage them to work on the right opportunities that have the highest propensity to close? And so they've done a really good job of focusing those reps to those opportunities and really helping organizations streamline that and forecast better and basically run their sales organizations better, which in turn makes more money and everybody's really happy.
Yeah,
right?
it's a hard problem to solve outside of like telling your reps to update the task, log the activity.
Because they're going to go right away and do that.
Yeah, value-added follow-up. It's a tough problem to solve. That's interesting. So what was the biggest kind of success learning experience at Clary that helped you level up?
So, I think at Clary, I really, I've always had an operational brain because I've always been very focused on process-driven teams. And Clary was my first endeavor where I really didn't own a quota-carrying team from a revenue perspective. I owned the SDRs, I owned sales enablement, I owned sales operations. And so I really got to kind of fine-tune, and this has certainly helped me significantly in roles since. I'm not sure you have a sales leader who probably understands the markups or sales ops ecosystem of tools probably better than I do right now.
Awesome.
That's probably a big claim. I probably shouldn't do that. Pete Kazanji's going to come out of the woodwork now and school me. But, I think it really forced me to really understand the ecosystem, and it's an ecosystem that I want to continue to play in. Part of the reason I joined Conversica, because there's some phenomenal things that are happening here in this space, and the amount of saturation and noise, but also the pain and problem that has to be solved in this space is so significant that it's a really interesting space, and Clary kind of really forced me to understand that space even better.
Oh, yeah. So it kind of opened you up like, okay, this is a massive TAM, massive opportunity. I mean, which is why you're in it, why we're both in it now.
Absolutely. And there's going to be a great consolidation that happens in the next 18 to 24 months. We're seeing it at the tippy top, at the lead, at the lead and data augmentation level with like ZoomInfo and Datanyze and all those companies combining. And we're going to see it now with some of the sales acceleration tools. So I'm really excited to be part of that and see how that plays out. Yeah,
likewise. So that's incredible. And then biggest takeaway. So the biggest takeaway at Clary was just the opportunity in sales acceleration and sales automation and
understanding the market, really where markups and sales ops play, and just the space that it's in right now. It's a huge TAM, and it's going to continue to grow because it's where companies have to focus their go-to-market to make money.
That's awesome. And then you went to one of my customers as the lead of sale, head VP of sales at The Hustle. Awesome business communications platform. Tell us a little bit about what brought you out of sales tech and into kind of like communications at The Hustle.
So Hustle is actually a peer-to-peer text messaging application. And so what was really exciting about Hustle, and I still hope they follow this vision, some things changed and pivot as the world of startups always do. But the thing that I thought was super intriguing about Hustle, and I hope they come back to this, is really the ability for them to become like the de facto leader in digital communication. If you think about the evolution of communication over the since the 1980s, the reality is we've been a digital first communication world for the last 10 years. 85% of smartphone users would prefer text text or some type of message application like WhatsApp, Kik, over any other type of communication. And so what you see in go-to-market engines now is us banging our heads and doing the same thing we've done for the last 15 years, phone calls, emails, and now we slaughter people on LinkedIn. And the reality is where they're most accessible and where they want to communicate is on their cell phone devices. There's some legal things out there that makes it kind of gray, and we certainly have to work through those. But the reality is we're going to have to get smarter about how we communicate with people, and the way we're going to need to get smarter is in the digital ecosystem. And so Hustle played there. And so the vision that I saw when I joined was really them expanding into the various messaging applications: WhatsApp, Kik, cell phone, SMS, iMessage.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then being able to tap into the networks that are available on those. Basically, if you think friend-to-friend, which is B2C, if you think peer-to-peer, which is B2B, imagine if someone had my WhatsApp and my cell phone, my text, my contacts from my mobile phone, and could expand their CRM database with those. Again, legal compliance and things you have to work out to figure out how you do that appropriately, whether they share messages and you opt in or what. But the growth for companies and for them to actually find like-minded customers quicker is phenomenal. And I think that's what Hustle can do. And I think if they focus really heavily, they can get back to that. I think that's a huge market play that no one else is doing right now.
Yeah, I've got a love-hate relationship with text message marketing and software. I lost my second startup when I was 21, 22. I lost millions running in mobile, which was like 2007. I thought text message marketing was going to be the biggest thing since sliced bread, and it failed for a number of reasons.
I think it's going to be. I think you're going to have to do it smart, and I think you can't focus so heavily on text. I think it's very similar to when you think about tools like Outreach and you think about how the sequencing works there. That's why you pepper in WhatsApp and you pepper in Kik and maybe Facebook Messenger. When you spread it across the various digital ecosystems and you have a tool that can track that, so you're not hitting all of them 50 million times, you have a smart solution for when and how you do that digital communication. And again, I think if they can get there, I think the world's ready for it now. I think that I think back then and now, I hate getting emails because they're so saturated now. Heaven help you if you leave me a voicemail. If the text transcribe doesn't do it, you're never hearing from me. And so I think we've got to figure it out, and I think we're on the cusp of doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what was the biggest thing that you learned at Hustle as a sales leader? Because you were VP of sales, you were there almost a year, and then joined Conversica. So it sounds like you liked it but you didn't love it and you were ready to move on.
I loved the people, and I loved the diversity. There was lots of things I loved about the company. I think the mistake, I think where I was misaligned with Hustle. You like how I chose that word?
I love the politics.
Yeah,
it's good.
You like that? I'll call myself out. I think where I was misaligned with Hustle is I don't think the solution was enterprise ready. I think and this wasn't a decision for me. I believe in bringing up inside and mid-market sales first. I think it proves market momentum, and then you pivot to enterprise as you understand the roadmap to get there. Shortly after I joined, I reported to the COO. They brought in a new SVP of sales who pivoted very heavily enterprise focused and hired a bunch of field reps. I feel like it was a story of the typical go-to-market fail where you think you're ready, your product is ready for a level that's enterprise, not. Yeah. And you pivot too quickly to enterprise, and you don't have any kind of market momentum pushing you there. And our burn went through the roof. And so,
oh gosh, yeah, because those field sales reps are so damn expensive, and they don't
amazing.
Produce anything within the first 6 to 12 months, right?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I thought you were going to say they don't produce. It's like, no, they do. It just takes a really long time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, over an extent. I mean, they can not produce anything for a while. Startup, that's tough to retain too if you don't have the inbound.
It is. And so I think bringing up the inside and the mid-market model would have proven out the things that would have saved us from that. But at the end of the day, I still think if they get tight on their play, it's a phenomenal play. I still think Roddy, who's the CEO, is an amazing guy. And I think the things he's doing with diversity, no one else has been brave enough to try. So I'm 100% pulling for them. I just think it was a misalignment with me.
That's awesome. So now you're at Conversica, which is really exciting, and
I am.
I'm excited for you. You know, I know we're both in the sales AI space, and you guys
Yes.
do a lot of amazing things with inbound leads. We do a lot of amazing things with outbound leads. It's really cool. I love like
Sounds like we need to get together.
I know I love the way that you guys are leveraging the tech to make sure that like no lead gets left behind. I feel like
There
that's
you
a
go.
political campaign, but it's awesome stuff, and the traction that the company's been generating has been huge. Do you have anything that you've learned like with Conversica before we go into your top sales secret? Now I know it's early, you're a few months in, but just curious, you know, if there's any big learning that you can share before going into your top sales secret.
I knew because I had encountered. So Rachel Brooks is our our AI assistant here at Conversica, and I'd actually encountered her as I filled out lead forms. Because anytime I'm looking at a company, I'm going to go through their process. And I have to say, I thought she felt very humanized when she reached out to me. I did catch on. I think it was after the second attempt I caught on that she was AI, and the only reason I did was because of her title. There was something wonky in the signature line, which I gave them feedback on and we fixed. But it wasn't in her verbiage. It was in how we had set up her title and signature. And then as I came in and I've actually seen the conversations, and I know this is remedial learning versus scaling organizations to 110, but it was surprising to me to see how deeply people interact with the AI to the point where there's actually been people asking them out and actually asking for their opinion on this information. And so the interesting thing about Conversica is it's been around for it's between 12 and 14 years. And with machine learning and AI, part of what makes something like that so intelligent is the amount of time that it's been in play. And so when I go back and actually look at these conversations and the way that the AI can actually interpret like emotion and sentiment and things of that nature, like it is actually dumbfounding to me. Like I experienced it in a very short interaction that I was doing, just in trying to understand the company, but in seeing like how deep, like 8, 15, 10, 15 interactions and like how they're having like an actual conversation with this AI, I'm like, it's been really enlightening to me that technology has really come that far and that we can actually, use that to have an augmented workforce. I think it's going to be really
awesome
to go to market teams.
Great. Well, Kharisma, we're here. We finally made it through all of your badass micro secrets, sales secrets throughout your career, which is amazing. I love the level of detail. I wish I got like that memory and that level of detail for all these interviews because that was fire. That was incredible.
Blessing and a curse.
Yeah. So sales secrets from the top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Kharisma, if you had to go back in time to when you first started in selling, what is your top sales secret to maximize your sales results?
Focus on your sales team. If you focus on your people and if you properly enable and empower your people, they will do what's right for your customer and your organization will hit phenomenal results in sales. We are already seeing here at Conversica, we had an SDR team, probably hadn't had quite as much focus as they needed. I've come in, we've enabled them. They've improved 100% over the last quarter.
That's incredible.
Already. And if you're not focused on your people, if you're not giving them the blueprint to success, and if you're not enabling them properly to execute that blueprint for success, you're going to fail. And if you fail, you're failing yourself and your people. Focus on your people, focus on the right giving your people the right blueprint, enable them properly, and then empower them and get out of their way, and you will have amazing results.
That's incredible. And just because we cover the what, the why, and the how. So we covered the what and the why. When you tell me, look, we doubled 100% increase. You got to focus on the people, the right blueprint. You got to empower and enable. I'm listening. I'm like, what the hell? Like, where do I start? What does that mean? Like, how do I put it to action? Like, what were some of the things that you did that maybe the audience can do to try to double their team's output and success?
Absolutely. So it goes to the blueprint. So when I say show them the blueprint, so when you come into an organization, anything when it's actually even field sales, but I call that my snowflake in the organization because everyone's a little bit different. But if you're looking at your process-driven teams like inside sales, quota-carrying teams, or SDR organizations, their capacity models, give the team the blueprint to success. You know how many inputs or how many active leads you need in sequences to be successful. If you aren't measuring that with your team on a weekly basis and they don't know what that measurement is, then you're not enabling them properly to be empowered for success. Tell them if you're supporting SMB, you need 220 active leads in sequence at any given time. You need to have 5 conversations a day. Of those 5 conversations, 1 will convert. If you're not converting, we're going to role play. All of those input metrics then gives you a measurement that you need to do that can give you a coaching opportunity. So if you're not getting 5 conversations, you're not setting your sequences up right. If you're getting 5 conversations and you're not converting 1, your messaging isn't right. So when you have those inputs and that blueprint to success, you have exactly where you need to coach them.
That's awesome. Wow. So to wrap up the secret, you have to focus on the people. You have to provide the right blueprint, which is like really the micro math, the formulas, the coaching, the roadmap to say like, okay, this is how much you want to make. This is what you have to do to hit those sales numbers. And then you said like coach on wherever they're falling short in the funnel to level them up.
Yeah, pull the lever.
And then when you talk about like empowering, because you and I, we may be like detail-oriented freaks, right? Like, how do you not jump on someone like, no, this is what you need to do? Like, how do you empower them with like the ability and freedom to like make their own decisions given the blueprint?
So, well, I'll answer that with 2 things. I do believe that there's something called will and skill issues, right? So if someone has a will issue, I can't fix that. I won't try. I'll manage them out very quickly. I'm a very honest person about that. I tell everyone in an organization. Then there's skill issue. And then when you look at a skill issue, you need to look at it 2 ways. Well, actually, you need to make one decision. Is this skill trainable? Yes or no? Yes, it's trainable. Is this skill trainable within the time frame that's not detrimental to the rest of the team, meaning I don't have to sink 10 hours a week to fix this skill detriment? If the answer is no, that it can be trained in a reasonable amount of time, my job as a people manager is to go in and fix that skill. And if I'm not doing that, then I suck and I shouldn't be a people manager. So I make that assessment between will and skill. Then the second thing that I really look at when I'm looking at, I'm sorry, go back to the question. I got off track. I apologize.
Just how you empower people so that they maximize their success without like trying to tell them, like without micromanaging.
Absolutely.
I think because this is something that I'm trying to work on as a leader. I'm bad at it.
So the technique that I use once I decide if it's a will or a skill, because will you can't fix, get rid of it.
And will means like they're just not like putting in the work, right?
Attitude, chip on their shoulder, things that I can't fix those. Like it's
not coachable.
Break them and then they'll just rebuild, but that's very rare. Like figure out if it's a will. If they're not willing to do it the way they need to do it and they have this chip and it has to be done their way, it's toxic to your environment because they're talking about it behind your back. Just get rid of them. If it's a skill, it's your responsibility to fix it. The second piece that and I learned this probably about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. I keep forgetting how long I've been doing this now, but there's this technique called questioning for self-discovery. And I've kind of coined it seeking to understand now after Shamrot at Clary, his term, he called it seeking to understand. But the way that I do is I ask my people questions until the data becomes their own. Instead of saying, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Everyone knows what they need to do. What you need to do is make it relative to them. And so I'll ask questions. If you were in my shoes and this was the performance, what would be the outcome that you would take? What would you do next? And what I do is start getting them to self-realize the things that they need to change, and they want to be more empowered to do it. Because nothing's worse than telling yourself you suck at something. Someone else tells you to suck, you think of justification why they're wrong. When you tell yourself you suck, you fix it. And so that's what I'm trying to get them to do, is realize that they need to fix something internal to them that I can't really fix. Or they need to hold themselves. Actually, it's not even about fixing. It's about accountability. I need them to get to a level where they're holding themselves accountable for their own outputs versus me having to hold them accountable. And once you can get them to that point, not only do you have them completely empowered, but you're also growing your next bench of leadership as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know you may have to run right now, but that's incredible. And there was a book too that I read that kind of taught me a little bit about that, called Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. My former leaders that would ask those questions to like guide you versus tell you like, this is what you need to do now. I mean, you literally, you multiply your output because you feel kind of empowered to come to this solution on your own without Kharisma telling me down my throat what I need to do as a sales rep.
Absolutely. And then what they do
It's so hard to do, though. It's so hard to execute.
It's very frustrating. But I've actually, because I've been doing it so long, I've gotten really good at it. But sometimes they can tell I'm doing it. But the interesting thing is, once you do that enough times, they start asking themselves that question. And when they do come to me, they'll come to me with, hey, Kharisma, I've thought about it these 3 ways. What do you think? And then what I'm doing then is helping guide them to the right decision across 3 metrics, as opposed to trying to even get them to understand that there's 3 metrics to look at. So it becomes very different conversations, and you see them grow as leaders versus, just giving people answers.
That's amazing.
It goes back to the old thing of teaching them to fish versus fish. You're giving them a fish.
Amazing. Well, I know you're probably getting kicked out of your conference room. So
they're trying.
Kharisma Moraski, thank you so much for taking the time. Where can the audience follow you, learn from you, subscribe to you for more, great sales tips, secrets, you name it?
You know what? I think the best place is to go to LinkedIn. I'm actually I've been chastised enough that I'm gonna start doing more blogging and more information, and I'm gonna feed it all through LinkedIn.
Yeah, coach, dude. I'll be your mentee, man. Coach me. Teach me the secret ways. Teach me the secret ways throughout this career. No, it's incredible. Thank you so much again for joining the show and the book, and thank you, audience, for joining us for this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Go follow Kharisma Moraski on LinkedIn right now. Connect with her for more, and thank you again for tuning into the show. Buy a copy of the book at secretsalesbook.com, secretsalesbook.com, and you can watch the show on iTunes, Spotify, Cloudcast, SoundCloud, wherever, iTunes, you name it, everywhere where there's something out there on audio. Catch the YouTube, you name it. So take care, guys.